ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930 present The Drive.
It is Tuesday, May 16th. Your drive begins now on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. I'm your host, Paul Swann. I'm here for the entire hour. We'll get your text in this hour at 304-396-TALK. That's 304-396-8255. What a terrible day it is outside in the greater Huntington tri-state area. What a nasty weather situation. We were supposed to have baseball earlier today at the Kennedy Center. Unfortunately, the game between Marshall and Morehead State was canceled, not going to be rescheduled. So the Herd's going to be back in action now on Thursday, beginning its final series of the season at number 8 Coastal Carolina. First pitch is going to be, I believe, 6 p.m. for that one in Conway, South Carolina. Hopefully the weather will hold there. But if you are driving home in this mess right now and you are listening to this show live, be careful out there. And if there's any pressing updates, we'll have them throughout the night right here on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. So we got baseball coming back tonight. The Pirates are back in action. They've had a really interesting schedule these last few days. The Pirates have got a 2-game series starting tonight, 6:40 in Detroit, and then they've got an afternoon game tomorrow with Detroit, and then they're going to be off tomorrow. They were off yesterday, 2 games starting today and then tomorrow, and then off the following day. You can catch those games right here on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. Monday baseball, the Rockies beat the Reds 9-8. Game 2 of the series tonight, 8:40 in Denver. The Cleveland Guardians are opening up a series tonight at 8:10 against the White Sox in Chicago. And Atlantic League baseball action, the Charleston Dirty Birds open up a road series at Gastonia. That is tonight, 6:35 p.m. And, of course, if you've been following the NBA and the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs and the NBA Western Conference Finals are set tonight, 8 o'clock. 8:30 will be tip, 8 o'clock on our sister station, Cat Sports 93.3 and 1340. It's going to be the Lakers taking on the Denver Nuggets. Please, NBA, give me Lakers Celtics. Please, NBA, give me Lakers Celtics. That is what I am pulling for. And then Stanley Cup playoff second round action yesterday. This was to settle it to get into the Western Conference Finals. And Dallas beat the upstart Seattle Kraken 2-1. So the Stars win that series 4-3. Could you imagine Seattle and Las Vegas, the last 2 expansion teams in the NHL, playing in the Western Conference Finals for the right to go into the Stanley Cup? I mean, Las Vegas was already a storybook start with its first ever season, running into basically a clear and open path, it felt like, into the Stanley Cup Finals. So they have another shot at it tonight. Or they have got another shot at it coming up. And last night was the end for, I thought, a really good run from Seattle. Now, on to what is happening in the world of sports today. We got a few things to get into. We're going to talk about Pat McAfee. He is joining ESPN in a multi-million-dollar blockbuster deal. We're going to get into that. We're going to focus on the NFL because the NFL, considering making the New York Jets the Black Friday game, we talked about it on this show that the Cincinnati Bengals expressed willingness to be the permanent host for the Black Friday game. So it appears that maybe the New York Jets, after getting that game, started thought, you know, that might be a pretty cool thing to do. So it might be New York. We'll talk about that. And something that we've talked about before and different aspects of over-the-air versus cable versus streaming. television platforms. Well, NBC is going to exclusively air the Bills-Charger game and an NFL playoff game on Peacock. Now, this is different than what Amazon Prime has been doing with Thursday Night Football. A little bit different. An actual playoff game behind a paywall, a streaming service that, to be honest, majority of you don't have unless you're a big wrestling fan. So we'll talk about that. And I just got a text in. Someone is sitting in the rain right now. It's a downpour where they're parked, and they said the football stadium scoreboard is coming along. So, hey, if you got pictures of that, send those to me. I haven't been over there in a couple of days. Send me those photos. You can text them to me, 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255, or you can tag me on Twitter at Paul Swann. I want to see those. And if you are in the area right now, stay in your car. Yeah, it's kind of nasty out there right now. For those of you listening on the podcast, hopefully you are a lot drier than we are right now listening live on the show. So we'll get your text in, 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. That's our text line. Again, you can find me on Twitter as well, and that is at Paul Swann. So you've got a couple ways to be a part of the program. We're going to get into all of this. We'll talk about what you want to talk about as well, because after all, we try to open up the show for you, be a little bit more interactive than some platforms allow you to be. So hit the text line, find me on Twitter. We'll do all of that when we continue with this edition of The Drive on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
We're taking Paul Swann everywhere. Download or subscribe to The Drive with Paul Swann on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to the Tuesday, May 16th edition, The Drive on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. My name is Paul Swann. I'm taking your text this hour, 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. Earlier on our text line, I was sent a note that the scoreboard's coming along quite nicely at Jones T. Edwards Stadium. And they sent me a photo of it. It's coming down. It's a beautiful sight to see that erector set coming down piece by piece. I wish someone would save me a piece of it, though. I could just have a piece of the erector set. It would be a conversation piece for me, a collector's item maybe. I want a piece of the erector set. Somebody at Marshall, can you do me a solid and get me a piece of this monstrosity just so I can have it? Only because I hate this thing. And so I'm excited to see these photos of the scoreboard coming down, the erector set coming down. We get a proper scoreboard over in that end zone now, proper. I've always thought that, now, again, here I am spending a lot of money that's not mine to spend, but I always thought that end zone should be a little bit more of a second type of facility building, maybe. I don't know if you would make that the facility building, or you would make that an end zone, a fully end zone suite area. You know, maybe even take those seats out, the permanent seats, the concrete seats, take those out a little bit and reformat that whole area. I know, again, I'm spending a lot of money that's not mine to spend, but I think what we've got going on right now is a very good start here to get rid of that. It just never blended with the stadium. I hated it. Absolutely. I mean, it's like, hey, let's tack on some bleachers to the stadium. No reason or rhyme. Doesn't blend with the stadium as well. Looks out of place. Nothing fits. And now it's coming down, thankfully. 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. That is our number. You want to be a part of the program. You can also find me on Twitter at Paul Swann. So we all like following the NFL. At least I think we do. I think the multitude of us like the NFL. And a lot of us are Bengals fans. I know that if you listen to this show, you're either a Bengals fan or you hate my Bengals. I don't think there's a happy medium here. I think it's either you hate the Bengals or you love the Bengals. I don't think there's middle ground here. But one thing is certain. We love watching the NFL. We love watching the NFL playoffs. It's our favorite time of the year, at least for some of us. And we've also been talking about how streaming services are the future. We've talked about this for a year. I even said, hey, Marshall on ESPN Plus, that's a lot better than what Marshall previously had. And I'll stand by that. Marshall on ESPN Plus is a lot better than Marshall on some of the other platforms it's been on in years past. Some of the different outlets, the digital channels, side channels for the main frequency. You can still get them on cable, but it's a lot better if you're on ESPN Plus. I think that's fair compared to the previous contract. And it's because, again, streaming is where a lot of people thought it might be. Now, we know there are layoffs at ESPN, and we're going to talk about that here a little bit. There are layoffs at ESPN. There are layoffs at Disney. I know Disney Plus lost subscribers. I think Netflix has leveled off a little bit here. I'm not sure how some of the other major platforms are doing, but I think the streaming has leveled off a little bit because years ago, the big thing was, hey, we're going to cut the cord to cable, and we're going to go to streaming. Now it costs as much, if not more, if you want to get everything you want. You got to get this service here. I got to get Peacock now. I got to get Paramount Plus. I got to get Max, the new version of HBO Max. I got to get Max. I got to get Netflix. I got to get Hulu. You got to get all these things here to even get what you want. Got to get Apple. You like soccer? You like Major League Soccer? You got to get Apple TV. And now by itself, a few bucks for Apple TV. You love soccer? Hey, that's fine. I need ESPN Plus. I get hockey and a few other things. I get a lot of Marshall content there. Okay, that's not a big thing here. I ended up getting the center ice package on DirecTV because it was better for me. To be honest, it just worked out better for me. I'm like, okay, I can record the game easier. I get NHL Network. I get a few other things. And that's why I like the NFL Sunday Ticket, because it was on a platform that you might think is old school, but still it just worked better for me. Now it's on YouTube TV, and the NFL is going the way of streaming because here we are talking about Peacock. This is the NBC platform. This is Peacock. And so it has secured exclusive rights to air the Bills-Chargers NFL game in Week 16. So if you're a Bills fan or a Chargers fan and you are out of market, because they're not going to take the game away from the local affiliates. So over the air, you can watch the Bills or Chargers. I believe that's the case. But anybody else that wants to watch this thing, Week 16, you're going to have Peacock. And also, there's going to be a wild card game that's going to be on Peacock. It's a one-year deal between NBC and the NFL. It's valued at $110 million. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. So NBC Sports will present 3 postseason games on NBC and Peacock, including 2 wild card playoff games and 1 divisional playoff game. The game will also be aired on local NBC affiliates in the participating markets. But here's the thing. Now, Peacock already streams NBC's NFL schedule, but for this game, you're going to have a subscription to watch. So this playoff game is set to air in the Saturday primetime window, which will join 2 other wildcard games. One's going to be on NBC and one's going to be on ESPN on Monday. Fox and CBS will air each a game. So it's getting spread around. And already I have seen a lot of pushback. There are a lot of people who are not happy about this. Because who has Peacock? Now, I'll qualify that. If you're a big fan of NBC programming, you have Peacock. If you're a big fan of the WWE, you have Peacock, right? And for a while, if you were an Xfinity customer, you had Peacock. I mean, there's a free tier, but you had Peacock because it was bundled in. NBC Universal had a long-term deal, or at least they had a deal with Xfinity, Comcast, and so if you were a subscriber to internet service, you had Peacock. Now you don't. They've pulled that back. And now you're going to have to get another subscription service. It's one thing that, okay, Sunbelt's got a package with ESPN. A multitude of games are going to be on the streaming package, and there are going to be a few over-the-air games. All right, that's a lot better than trying to hunt and peck for these games on various networks, not exactly available everywhere. It was horrendous in Conference USA. So the TV package is better in the Sun Belt. But here it is. This is a playoff game, and it is an additional service. It's not, all right, the game's going to be on ESPN. Well, most cable packages have ESPN. Most satellite packages have ESPN. You have to drop to one of the very basic tiers on DirecTV, and I can only speak for that. You could drop down to a basic tier, or at least a very low tier. Because there are some people who don't want ESPN. They want certain channels, and there's a tier you can get that. But for the most part, we can get, if an NFL game is on NBC, over the air, we've got it on cable, satellite, we've got an antenna. If it's on Fox, CBS, we've got the game. If it's on ESPN, for the most part, if you're listening to this show, you have ESPN. I would say, I'm going to honestly be surprised if you are an avid listener of this show and you don't have ESPN on your TV package. So we can all get these games. If you're a fan of the, let's say, MLS, maybe you have Apple TV. It's a different here. But this is one game that has moved completely off of cable and satellite and moved onto a streaming service, which if you want that streaming service, you're going to have to pay. Now, you might think to yourself, okay, what's 1 month of subscription to Peacock? What's the deal here? What's that going to cost me? So let's Google that. Subscribe to Peacock. Let's see. Let's check. Let's see what my options are. Okay. All right. So if I want to get the premium, I think you can get it for $4.99. Okay, so we're talking at $4.99 here. Or you get the Premium Plus package, and that's with no ads, with limited exclusions. That's $9.99 a month. How about no? I'm just going to say no because it's not as if, and work with me here, it's not as if this is a fan-friendly move. This is, the NFL just cashed a $110 million deal for a game that more people would watch if it was available on a traditional outlet than Peacock, a streaming platform here. And you might think, well, it's not that big of a deal. I'll just pay the money. Do you really want to pay the money? Do you really want to add just another streaming platform to your portfolio already? That's where I'm kind of curious. are we getting to the point where, all right, this is a little too much here? We're getting a little too far into the splintering of these packages, and especially the NFL. The NFL is one of the biggest culprits in regard to milking the fan for every single dollar it possibly can milk. Would you, and maybe I think I already know the answer because sometimes I've heard the complaints. Would you, for one game, would you plunk down a monthly subscription fee for one game? Doesn't matter if it's Marshall, if it's the if you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan and the Bengals are going to be on Peacock for this one game in the playoffs, are you plunking down the money for 1 month of Peacock? 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. That's our number to be a part of the program here on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. Speaking of money, ESPN, and there are layoffs at ESPN, there are layoffs at Disney, dropping a reported $120 million, at least. At least. It has to be that number because that's what Pat McAfee is walking away from. 4-year, $120 million contract with FanDuel. He's going to be with ESPN. We will talk about that. Also, we will get your text in, 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. I'm asking the question, would you drop a monthly subscription fee just to watch one game? Texter already writes in and says, and they've got 2 points. I'll read them both. There's a lot of West Virginia, and the U.S., for that matter, does not and will not have good enough broadband to subscribe to streaming services. 2, Peacock's UI, that's user interface, is maybe the worst of all. I wholeheartedly agree with both of those statements. Let's go with the broadband issue first. Broadband is just not up to spec in West Virginia and in the state of West Virginia. I'm sorry, the state of, United States of America. It's not up to spec. It's not up to spec in the Mountain State. It's not in the spec across the country. There are so many bottlenecks, and there are so many different pricing tiers, and the availability of it is limited as well. It's not as good as other countries when it comes to internet speeds. And then you have so many companies that thought, okay, let's pivot to streaming. And now they're starting to come back a little bit here. You know, the cable and satellite model actually wasn't a bad model for the consumer. Now that you think about it a little bit more, it wasn't a terrible model. Sure, pricing is always going to be an issue here, but that's something where something needs to be done. You should be able to a la carte a little bit more. You should be able to, okay, I want these channels. I want to pay for these channels. And, of course, there are a lot of distribution deals where there are bundles and packages. But I agree with the point here that broadband is not going to allow this as much as some of these companies think, and they should know this. They should know this. Also, Peacock has probably the worst interface of all time. I couldn't even clear. I was trying to watch. I watched one show, and then all of a sudden, Peacock's interface wanted to keep feeding me that show. I didn't like the show. I don't want to see it again. I couldn't clear it. It's terrible. It's slow. It's buggy. It lags. It's a terrible platform. 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. More coming up. It's The Drive, ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
This is The Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Welcome back to the Tuesday, May 16th edition, The Drive on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. Our text line this hour is 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. So, one of the biggest media personalities going today is Pat McAfee. And he has self-made himself. You see him everywhere. You see him WWE broadcasts. You see him on College Game Day. You see him on his own platform. He's everywhere. He has become a major part of the sports conversation. And he's self-made himself. He is invested in himself. He had the ability to invest in himself, but it was still a risk, and he did so. Invested in himself, and it's paid off. And right now he's in the second year of a 4-year, $120 contract. I'm sorry, $120 million contract with FanDuel. And he's going to be heading to ESPN. His show, according to the reports, the details, it's going to air live on ESPN, ESPN Plus, and ESPN's YouTube channel this fall. According to Pat McAfee, it will be Get Up, First Take, then our program. The question here is, how's ESPN affording this? Because there's massive layoffs at Disney right now. Bob Iger announced in February that the entertainment company would cut 7,000 jobs. And there are job layoffs happening not only at Disney, all of its subsidiaries, but that includes ESPN. That absolutely includes ESPN. And he's walking away from a $120 million contract with FanDuel. So what is the new price here for Pat McAfee? And I think it's fantastic for Pat. I absolutely do. Who would have thought that Pat McAfee, the punter of the West Virginia Mountaineers, would turn his career after the NFL into this massive following, this huge media platform. And now he's going to be on ESPN, which, this is a better deal than FanDuel. That's the thing. It's a much better deal than what FanDuel can offer. Because, of course, you're on the worldwide leader. That's why Marshall is on the worldwide leader, because it's a better deal than what Conference USA offered. So Marshall got out of Conference USA. Jeff O'Malley, when he was the interim athletic director, took the stage, said ESPN, pointed that out. ESPN, that was a big reason why Marshall fled the Sun Belt when the American came calling and started picking the conference apart. Marshall got out, and the Sun Belt was able to offer ESPN. So now Pat McAfee is going to be on ESPN. Still going to be on College Game Day. And here is, I think, the reason for it. Pat is going to bring a different level of energy, a different level of, let's just say he's going to attract, I think, a younger audience, because let's be honest here. People who grew up with ESPN are probably still watching ESPN, and then there are younger generations that maybe aren't so much in tune. Maybe not so much in tune with ESPN, maybe not watching as much sports content. I know a lot of younger people who are not necessarily watching sports content. Now, I have a different view because some of the young people I know are directly involved in sports, so that kind of skews it a little bit for me. But I think this is going to bring probably a younger target audience. ESPN's trying to capitalize on his appeal that will include social media, digital, YouTube. I was just disappointed this didn't include radio, because I was excited thinking, oh, hey, we're going to get the Pat McAfee show on radio. And what's going to happen here is Pat's going to have more control than most. And the only thing that's really going to change is they're not going to be dropping the F-bomb. And that's fine. That's good. You don't need to do that. You're on ESPN now. Okay, you can leave the F-bomb at home. It's all right. You don't need to use that to highlight your point there. You can get it along without using the F-bomb. And this is going to give ESPN a built-in audience automatically. This is going to bring a different audience to ESPN that might not be there. This is going to bring a younger target audience, which might not be there. This is also going to allow Pat McAfee to focus more on the air content, what he does instead of the behind-the-scenes operation. This is going to allow him, I'm sure it's going to afford him the ability to have a little bit more freedom as well. Because Pat McAfee was the CEO and the ops manager and everything else. Pat McAfee made Pat McAfee go. And that includes making sure the back end worked, the behind the scenes worked. And so you leave a company like FanDuel and you go to the worldwide leader, you're going to be all over the place. But I'm curious what the money is going to be because, again, he's leaving a $120 million contract with FanDuel. He's going to ESPN, but I'm curious what ESPN's paying because Disney's laying off people right now. That would be like letting go a lot of people here at your radio station because, we can't afford you. Then we hire one guy. Now, that's maybe boiling it down to too much of a basic thought here because with Pat comes an entourage. So the Pat McAfee show, you're getting the Pat McAfee show here. You're not just getting Pat McAfee. You're getting the majority of the show. But this is going to be interesting here because, Pat's been everywhere here. Yeah, so we're going to see him on SmackDown more. Is he going to have more time for SmackDown, less time for SmackDown? I mean, that's going to be interesting here to see where he's at. And, of course, his social media presence is going to definitely amplify the worldwide leader. And now, hey, look, let's bring Pat McAfee in here. Imagine that. You know how we bring Stephen A. Smith in on everything? We'll bring Pat McAfee in. I want to bring Pat McAfee in. 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. Your text when we continue. Also, you can find me on Twitter at Paul Swann. This is The Drive, ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
This is The Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Our final segment, it's 304-396-TALK to get in on text line. Our Twitter handle, it's mine anyway, it's Paul Swann. Welcome back to The Drive, ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. Let's go back to the text line. We're talking streaming earlier. One good thing, according to this texter, about streaming services is they are month to month. You're only out a few bucks to watch a single game. When it comes down to it, at the end of the day, if you really want to watch that game, $4.99, right? Is that what I said earlier? $4.99, I think, for Peacock. It's Peacock. It's not like Netflix where it's like $18. Disney Plus is a better value so far because you get Hulu, you get ESPN Plus, you get Disney if you get the family bundle or the bundle. Apple TV, though, if you're a fan of soccer, you're going to get that. If you're a fan of the NFL, I think this is a situation where you're trying to grow the platform. This isn't growing the sport. This grows the platform. It goes back to our conversation earlier. Marshall on ESPN Plus doesn't grow Marshall in the sense that if you're looking for Marshall, you're going to go to ESPN Plus. You're just going to go. You're going to go get it. You want to watch softball? You want to watch Ryan Epling call the softball game. You're going to tune in to ESPN Plus. If it's a home game, you'll hear Ryan Epling. He's going to call the softball game. He's going to do a fantastic job. It's going to cater to the home fan. Hey, I'm a Texas State fan. I want to watch Texas State take on the Herd. They're on the road. So I've got ESPN Plus. I'm going to tune in, and I'm going to watch Texas State. They're at Marshall, and I get to watch that because it's on ESPN Plus. Okay, so that benefits the Texas State fan, or that benefits the Marshall fan. That's the cool thing about that. Now, does that grow Marshall softball? It's available, so if you have a reason to go look for it, it's there. Now, if you get on a larger platform, then more potential eyeballs are going to be looking at your product, your game. You're going to see your university. Not necessarily are they going to be Marshall fans. They might be in the future. It's not exactly an exact science here. But if you're on a bigger platform, you're going to reach more people. If you reach more people, you might be able to, convert those people a little bit more. They know about Marshall. How did Marshall grow in the 90s? It's because Marshall was on statewide TV, and all of a sudden, people could see the Thundering Herd every week. I get to watch the game with Dave Weekley, Mark Martin. They were calling the game. Keith Morehouse on those broadcasts. Sonny Randall. You know what I'm talking about. If you were there, you know what I'm talking about. The Herd was on TV every single week, and it was great. It was on statewide TV. And, of course, this was before the advent of ESPN Plus. So there were people in the state that maybe didn't get a chance to watch Marshall on a weekly basis, and then here's Marshall on TV every week and rocking the world of a lot of teams. You got Randy Moss, and you had the amazing run in 1AA, and Chad Pennington, and a host of other quarterbacks, Byron Leftwich. Don't forget Troy Brown. He was okay. He wasn't terrible. That Michael Payton kid was good too. Miss him, by the way. Definitely miss Michael Payton. But you get my point. So streaming has its purpose, and eventually we might be to the point where, okay, streaming is where we're at, but I don't think we're there just yet. And I don't think part of the problem is I don't think television is going to have the reach that it used to have because there are so many different ways now to pull our attention. We have multiple screens here. I have multiple screens in this studio. I have my 2 computer screens so I can run the operation here. One's connected to the internet. Also, I have my laptop here. I have my phone. Some people have iPads. You have different ways to connect with our content here. But I think the cable satellite model at least still works because it reaches a broader audience right now. I think radio works as well because it reaches a broader audience. A couple of things to keep for tomorrow. We'll talk about the Bengals and the Black Friday game. It seems that the New York Jets might be the team to occupy the Black Friday game here in the future if this becomes a thing. Also, we have a new basketball coach at Huntington High School. Lambros Vingos is now the new head coach of the Huntington Highlanders. So we'll try to get him on the program here in the near future to talk about his vision for Huntington Highlanders basketball. He takes over from really, I think the way you look at this here is he takes over for a lot of good coaches, including Ty Holmes, Ron Hess, Arkell Bruce, Lloyd McGuffin. These are some of the names that he cited as the lineage, the heritage. So we'll try to get him on here the program soon. So congratulations to him as he takes over the Huntington Highlanders, and we'll get into that more throughout the week. Tomorrow on the show, we're going to have a couple of guests. We're going to have our usual check-in from the Charleston Dirty Birds. That's coming up tomorrow. And we're also going to be talking about track and field. We're going to have first up tomorrow from the track and field team, Macy Majoy, the indoor and outdoor pole vault champion of the Sun Belt. We'll have her on the program. Coach Caleb Brown's going to be on Thursday, and I think we've got Micah Aileen from the team on Friday. That's going to do it for this edition. Thanks for tuning in.
WRBC Huntington, W227BS Huntington. This is your radio home for Pittsburgh Pirates baseball. ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.